Hey!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thank you all so much for stopping by. It's been a long time coming and people really want to know who is stronger, Void Shiki or Featherine? A lot of people have been wanting to know what my opinion is about this topic in particular, Void Shiki or Featherine. I mean, I almost got paid to do this video, but I refused the offer because I was going to make this video anyways because, I mean, Featherine, Void Shiki, two of the most strongest characters in fiction, arguably. Point being, so what I'm trying to say is that the real winner of this verse battle is actually... Did you nerds really think I would tell you like 40 seconds into the video? Also, before I go any further, I want to give a huge shout out to Emergency Magic 9278. Thank you so much for the donation, my man. And yes, the next Fate video you will see on this channel will involve Kukulin. I promise you, brother. Void Shiki has been talked about on this channel multiple times over. Every time I talk about her, she has this aura that she brings. She instills fear into the feeble-minded mongrels. Given the scaling of the whole entire NASU cosmology, a bunch of rejects fail to understand the genuine power of Void Shiki and that she actually scales to 1S or the closest thing to tier 0, which I will explain later. There isn't really a need to go over any of her abilities, haxes, speed feats, durability, any of that stuff. I mean, she can use every ability in all of NASU. She transcends everything, and then she is just beyond powerful in terms of AP destruction. There's nothing that I really need to go into any more than I haven't already talked about. To talk about Featherine and to understand how powerful she is and where she scales to, I do have to talk about some cosmology type stuff so we all have a full understanding of where she stands. Obviously, I will try to talk in a way that you filthy, incompetent mongrels can understand the comprehension that I'm going to be laying out for you insignificant curs who doubt the power of Featherine. I can't believe people actually doubt Umineko. That's just kind of baffles me, to be completely honest. Huge shout out to my homie Lewis once again. He did help me understand a lot more things about the Umineko verse that I did not know before. I had a lot of questions I had asked him answer, which plays right into this video, but a majority of this is thanks to him helping me understand the verse even more so than I did previously. When we are talking about the full scope of Umineko, we need to understand that there are hierarchies and cosmologies. Firstly, here are the things that are kind of like short explanations of the domains that exist within Umineko, which Featherine's true form transcends some of them, as we will get into all of that stuff later. These basically just exist as a basis for the cosmology of the series. A part of the cosmology with Umineko are something called domains. Here it states that someone is in a higher domain and they would see anyone in the lower domain as fiction. The person being referred to in the last image that I just showed you is Featherine, which she resides in the third domain and she transcends the entirety of the witch domain. If it wasn't quite obvious already with these past scans, there was a hierarchy already established. Then the lowest domain is the human domain, the domain above the human domain is the witch's domain, and then the domain above the witch's domain and the human domain is the third domain. I have never said domain so many times in a single phrase in my entire life. Holy shit. Each domain transcends the domain beneath them. Translation for you mongrels. The third domain transcends the witch's domain transcends the human domain. Simple, I can't dumb it down for you idiots anymore. But there is something else that I need to talk about as it plays a key piece into the fuck! The Sea of Oblivion is a place that lacks the concept of death, being a void that beings can deny another to, which includes Burncastle, who is Featherine's Miko, someone who constantly revives her from boredom. Burncastle can find someone from the depths of Oblivion, and given that Featherine sees Burncastle and the rest of the witch domain as fiction, and that Burncastle cannot oppose her, it is very, very safe to assume that Featherine has the same abilities as Burncastle, just amplified to like the fucking max. Nobody but Lady Burncastle herself can find a location. Yes, well, that doesn't really exclude Featherine, but let me explain to you guys why. Featherine is not a part of the generic story. She actually is a reader who only got involved later on down the line. To further prove that Featherine is different from all the other characters, she is not a player but a spectator. But let's talk about how this all ties together, because I guarantee some of you guys are lost. Like, I understand Umineko is a very complex verse for no reason to exist for power scale. That's what it literally seems like, but I mean, it is kind of true, to be completely honest. genres. The human domain is part of the first cosmology. The witch domain is the second, which completely transcends the human domain and all of its layers. The third domain is the second highest domain, which is where Featherine does reside. And then there is the Sea of Oblivion, which encompasses the entire witch domain and third domain. Now, there is the true form of Featherine, but her true form exists beyond all previously mentioned constructs, to the point where she views Featherine and another identity she takes, Hachiojo, oh god, Toya, I can't with these names, man. Her form changes off whatever appearance or avatar she decides to take. After that, you've got the creator's domain, the very final pinnacle domain, a place unrestricted by anything. However, it is irrelevant in this discussion as Featherine does not scale to it. Before we continue, it is necessary to define a term commonly used within the 7th expansion universe, and that's called Kakera fragments. These fragments are conceptual forms of things viewed from a higher world, but that's not all with fragments. Beings of higher worlds can merge fragments to create stories as shown right here. Higher beings can merge and manipulate fragments. But now let's move on to the first domain. This is the most simple way to explain the human domain, as this will be relevant now because here are all the definitions of dimensions in Umineko. In short, anything viewed from a higher dimension is non-existence. Next is the explanation of dimensions. In this, 3 Kakera are presented as shown in the image alongside some text. This explains that while they are separate Kakera, they are still connected, being stories of the human domain. To add more credibility, there are statements that explain a little more on the connection, quote unquote. The key phrase here being the space war world and the school light novel world are connected by a hierarchical relationship. Basically, it works like this. Because these stories are limited to the human domain, they can be directly connected through a reality fiction hierarchy. As a computer game from one world, it's still its own Kakera, but on a lower hierarchy. The human domain was also stated to be like a chessboard to the higher worlds. To give more context to that, I will now explain a little bit of the chessboard that's in question. The white squares in the chessboard represent the normal human world, while the black cells represent the supernatural aspects of the human domain, like hell, heaven, and higher dimensions, for example. But now let's take your attention back over to the dimensions. Here are some just examples of dimensions that reside within the verse. So we have dimensions in the human domain and fragments that transcend the other. Now we can move on to one other thing, cat boxes. Basically, a cat box is a structure based off Schrodinger's cat. The cat box contains infinite truths, meaning universes in this case. Those truths all take the form of wave functions existing simultaneously even if they contradict each other. It is referred to as a multi-layered world, hinting back at the Kakera from earlier I did talk about, and all being directly correlated to one another. These cat boxes exist all throughout the verse, including Hanyu's cat box from all the way back in Higurashi. There exists a higher dimension where the narrative of the story is actually stopped and the pieces of higher beings can fight with abilities such as the red or blue truce, while normal beings aren't even aware such a place even exists. I don't want to spend too much time on the yokai part, but this is just to make it kind of fast, and it sums up the fact that there are infinite possibilities. When I do actually make a more in-depth full Cosmology Umineko video, I will go over every single detail that entails Umineko. But I ain't doing it for this shit. Nope, nope, nope. The underside of the game board is a void where concepts like time and space don't even apply, and it's a place where humans cannot access. It is the boundary between the human and the witch domain. Underside of the game board, the boundary between domains is actually quite something I never knew until I started doing more research, and Lewis helped me out with this shit. Now that we've went over the human domain, let's quickly give a TLDR about what's just been said. Each fragment transcends the last. There can be an infinite number of fragments inside a cat box. Yokai have the worlds of their own with alternate possibilities of those said worlds. Okay, I didn't really talk about the yokai, but I'm not getting into all that shit later. I will do that in a separate video. A being in the human domain cannot transcend into the witch domain on their own, as shown by Gap's world. Now it's time to move on to the witch domain. This is a higher domain, sometimes referred to as the world of the gods. Ha! World of the gods. Sounds like great creators. This is a brief explanation of the witch's domain. It's already been mentioned back in the first section, but here's how it shows it's entirely superior to everything in the human domain. Nothing of the human domain can physically reach the witch domain, only being able to be seen as a Kakera, and all the human domain is nothing but a chessboard, like I did state earlier, to the witch domain. In other words, it's just viewed as fiction. evolution. The concept of time also gets vague the closer one gets to the witch domain, to the point where it actually just stops existing. The only ways to enter this domain are, well, being made a piece of Miko from a higher being, being evaluated to the witch domain, or through an internal evolution of the spirit. The ladder of internal evolution takes an extended period of time. Rika had to evolve at least 100 years to become Burncastle. Another thing that a human cannot simply just do is be brought into the witch domain. They actually need to get accustomed so that their mind just doesn't disappear automatically. Getting into the domain off internal evolution is exceedingly rare. Beatrice is a special case, however, as she has endless magic, enabling her to grant endless evolution. Her being able to grant endless evolution also supports the infinite hierarchy in the witch domain and the third domain. Also, it provides a little bit more context for the third domain. If you guys couldn't already tell, the witch's domain completely transcends the human domain. But now let's get on to the real size of this domain. The domain encompasses a ladder, with each step being a layer. These are also sometimes called endeavors. A higher layer views the lower one as a kakura. They are objectively infinite, being not limited by numbers or having a literal infinite ladder statement. Now this is crucial, guys, and it needs to be explained. Now these scans right here that I'm about to show you have to be shown because this automatically proves that there is an infinite hierarchy that exists inside the witch's domain. The higher one goes through the layers, the less restrictions and more power they have. Oh yeah, here's also a little bit more context to the hierarchy, just so you have a clear picture understanding. Here we have a structure in the witch domain, the Sea of Fragments. Inside the Sea of Fragments, there are considered to be fragments there. These fragments can represent the lower worlds in which the domain and even the worlds of the human domain. All of these layers to the witch domain, which transcend this place, is also subject to falling into oblivion, as shown right here. Also, cat boxes are not limited to the human domain either. They can also contain layers to the witch dimension. Sorry, of the witch dimension. Domain. Fucking fuck, dude. Shit. Too many words. Too many new shit, bro. For this, there is Beatrix's cat box, where the human domain's worlds are viewed as kakura. Also, the falling into oblivion persists here as well. But let's go over Beatrix's cat box very briefly. Standing above the previously mentioned part of the Sea of Fragments is the meta world. Here, the worlds of the human domain appear as a game board. This is where higher beings go to play their so-called games. This is another superior layer, the meta world of purgatory. The cathedral exists here, which is a courtroom for these meta beings. Here's also another higher layer. God damn, how many higher layers are there in this fucking shit, dude? No wonder why this stuff is so closely resembled to NASU. Whatever, man, fine. But the cathedral higher layer is being placed over the normal layer. It's also possible it applies to the layers of the cat box. But let's talk about yet another layer. Oh my god, yeah, I'm just speaking in circles right now. But now we can talk about the golden lamb. This is the highest plane in the game board, to the point that while almost the entire cat box was destroyed, it stayed standing, being regarded as existing on a higher floor, quote unquote. The game master exists beyond all of this. Game master, not a true layer, but it is a game master being beyond it. In Featherine's study, everything so far, including Burncastle's cat box, is just a story. Stuff so far is regarded as a story to her. Pretty blatant reality fiction transcendence. The City of Books is the highest shown reality of the witch domain. This is an enormous reality holding endless books, which each being their own worlds. The height of this place is actually quite unknown, but it's very, very significantly high, given it is restricted to only witches of the Senate and the Great Witches. Going back once again, if you guys haven't already figured it out, reality fiction transcendence has already been proven by each layer, and each step is in the ladder, or each ladder is a layer, or whatever the fuck dumb shit I said earlier. Each step ladder is a layer of the reality, or oh my god, I'm losing my fucking mind reading this shit and trying to understand this stuff. There exists even a higher layer referred to as the spectators' rows and seats. Of course there is. Of course there is. But let's talk about the third domain, guys. Each domain and everything I've talked about is important for you to truly understand, to see how powerful Featherine is. Okay, Othinus, we're almost there. We're almost at the end of this video. Okay. This domain is shrouded in mystery, but off what we do know, it is the place where Featherine returned to after being touched by the Kingdom of God. She did not reach the level of the Kingdom of God because she did turn back, but she did not enter that domain, which let her preserve her existence. This is where Beatrice started to internally evolve. Now this links back to the endless evolution, which supports it being infinite and is worded as if stepping into your level, quote unquote, is entering a deeper version of the hierarchy. Through this, it could also be referred to as steps being taken taken from the hierarchy into the third domain. But since the third domain is not equal to the creators, it can be assumed that the part of the ladder which also gets us to the next point makes this relevant as supporting evidence, even if it is a bit uncertain. Beatrice began the internal evolution as shown here as she takes steps into the world, meaning that it is another hierarchy which is just like the witch domain. But how large? Again, potentially infinite. The voyage to the creator has no endpoint as shown right here. The scan shows that the hierarchy is potentially infinite. This easily makes Featherine high 1A. At least high 1A. So we know that this domain is likely an infinite hierarchy which transcends the witch domain to the point where everything is just a mere game board as stated before. I'll repeat the image for good measure just so you guys didn't lose your train of thought while trying to listen to all this information. It's like I'm fucking sitting down in a classroom teaching you kids about math or something. Some complex geometric, trigonometric, calculus 3 antiderivative equation that you guys probably will not be able to follow along. I'm mainly speaking to all the retards who actually believe that Featherine isn't all powerful. Those people. Like I said before, the third domain is above the witch's domain. Now exists the Sea of Oblivion. Everything that has been explained so far is part of it. I've already explained it with the other images in the parts of this explanation, but I will show everything relevant once again. The Sea of Oblivion is a thing that encompasses everything so far, at least giving it a high 1A structure. Now, beyond Featherine's avatar in the third domain is Featherine's true form, which exists as something that cannot properly be explained and can take forms of multiple actors as stated before. Featherine's true form is being graded to everything else being so far, at least making her high outer. Creatorhood is impossible to speak of, impossible to even know, and when a character reaches it, they lose all grounds of themselves and they become one with the state. They lose the power of distinctions, self, being, and even direct limitations like power or contraries, meaning that they stand above all things and exist above all forms of duality, which encompasses absolutely everything up until a tier 0. Featherine is the closest thing possible to this state, and she exists as the very final restriction, upholding the entirety of existence as a world-sustaining pillar, acting as its ground of being, including the sea of fragments. Featherine isn't bound to any character or just anything. At her core, she is indescribable and can write or remove any attribute from existence. Featherine is the closest existence to what's called the creatorhood. The fourth scan talks about the peak, quote unquote, any being reaching creatorhood, aka becoming a creator, and how Featherine returned from it. Character talking is Peace, who has been granted direct power from Featherine and is her Miko, or Shrine Princess form, whatever you want to call that. This is mostly to establish that Featherine is the highest possible existence beneath creatorhood itself, which itself is basically just attaining a state of nothingness which cannot act or think, besides being a divine supreme being of which characters merge with upon reaching this said state. Here's also the scan calling Featherine a candle that shines upon the great pillar holding up the world. Not much more needs to be said about that. This will be the first part to define what creatorhood is, but we do have the following. The entirety of Ubaneko runs off a system of internal evolution, where the ground of being gets narrower and narrower as the character ascends it. On the end is the human domain, where the ground is stable. There is no risk of falling, but the opposing side is the creatorhood, where the ground does in fact disappear. Their meaning or their being and the ground under their feet completely breaks apart, and they become a state that functions as pure dissolution upon reaching the state of creatorhood. A character disperses into one as their limits vanish. This is quite literally the same exact thing as the root. The root is a plane without any limitations that cannot be spoken of, without any boundaries or distinctions that upon reaching it individually disappears and a character disperses into its nature. This is a state directly correlated to that of power. The world the characters traverse is an infinite ladder leading to the bottomless depths and is an act to get one closer to the complete freedom, drifting to a distant immaterial plane. Featherine is the closest possible thing to a tier 0 character, well, with the creatorhood being tier 0 itself, and that's like the most accurate rating that we could actually give her as a tier, because her existence is the essence itself. Both Void Shiki and Featherine are the closest things I could think of to tier 0. World of Darkness, Warhammer 40k, all these other crazy ass verses, even Elder Scrolls, they don't even come near this shit. I don't know where the fuck you guys are getting this from. The basis for that Featherine is the essence herself, is the final restriction representing itself, while Void Shiki is the manifestation of her tier 0, which is the root. So it could really be her at her core. The internal part of her, Void Shiki herself, her body, is the closest thing to it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that because Void Shiki is the root, she is literally the closest thing to tier 0, which is equivalent to Featherine being closest to the creatorhood, which is tier 0. So given everything that we have went over, there really isn't anything that I want to say. My opinion on who is stronger is ridiculous because both of these characters are actually equal. That's it. They are equal. Not one is stronger, not one is weaker, not one has faster speed, not one's got better durability. All the other facts of the stats you always want me to talk about, speed, durability, AP power, they're all the same. They are equal. So if you want my genuine, honest opinion, both of these characters are equal in power and scaling. I can't think of one other character who would genuinely ever beat these two characters. You could name some fucking random dude from Shinza, Hajin, SCP? And there are still people trying to say that Goku can be Featherine.
Are you stupid?
What the fuck type of delusion are these losers on? I can't, bro. These bedridden Mongol troglodytes. I can't fathom the stupidity of some of the people that reside in the human race. You got my answer, guys. There's not one character here, Featherine or Void Shiki, who is stronger. This is actually a genuine tie, and that's my take on it. That's my take on it. So I don't know what else to say, man. I mean, these two women basically solo all of anime, literally anything. Not even anime, comics, whatever you want. They solo everything. I don't know, guys, but I've talked for way too long. This video is beyond long. So now I'm gonna go, I guess, play Yu-Gi-Oh and get Max Seed, or I'll go, you know, watch hentai or something. So I don't know. Peace.